Hello and welcome to the Clashing of Steel. And today my topic is the Elephant Wars. Well, this topic is rather hot, at least since the open beta started. I'm guessing that most players who have reached tier 4 or perhaps tier 5 have had some form of contact with the war elephants. And most of those contacts have probably had a negative outcome. The developers said that the elephants have many counters, the javelins, the light and heavy artilleries, perhaps even the pikes. I have seen how some of these counters work against elephants, and I'm a bit disappointed. Javelins can do a lot of damage to the elephants, but often enough the elephant can just push through any units and go after the javelins, forcing them to run or to die. It's not like the melee infantry in front of the javelins will slow them down. Even if they manage to slow him somewhat, they could just hit the stomp and go after the javelins. The javelins can't outrun them, and eventually the elephants will catch up. Javelins could probably work if there was only one war elephant, but since there are often enough three, it's gonna be hard. Well, the javelins don't feel like an exact counter to the elephants. Heavy artillery, light artillery, stakes and pikemen probably have the best chance against elephants. Best counter for the war elephants is probably the heavy artillery, light artillery as well, and the stakes that the elephants can't destroy. While the pikemen can stand strong, they still will most likely lose to the elephants. As you see here, elephants can counter elephants as well, but it just requires you to have a small understanding of tactics. You send one unit in as a sacrifice and then you flank with the others. The opponent here was tier higher and he focused one of my elephants with all three of his units, giving my team member and I a better chance to flank him. But this can't be considered as a viable counter. That would require for the teams to be balanced. There may be matches where there aren't any elephants in one team and the other team has like 3 elephants. And one player with javelins just can't counter them. Now you're actually going to see how catapults work against the war elephants. I wasn't expecting for them to have a hidden catapult unit, but they did. So I got a great example how this thing works. Even this missed shot that came really close slowed down my elephants. And soon you can actually see what happens if catapults focus the elephants. I'm focusing this elephant right now, and the catapult is focusing me. You can see the rocks flying in. They hit me quite heavily and their own elephant as well. The damage the catapults can inflict is quite huge and the staggers are very heavy. You can already see the rocks flying, and they're going to kill their own elephant along with my elephant. Note that that damage I got was from behind, so it was somewhat increased. This can show you that the catapult is probably the best counter to the elephants. Light artillery can do some damage, and javelins definitely are reasonable, but catapult can do so much more. Especially if all 3 rocks should hit the elephant. This was just a great example how elephants can be countered with catapults. Each rock that hits the elephant will do huge damage and even stagger them. But then again, if left unchecked, the single elephant can do so much more than 3 catapults. So this is another match with the war elephants. Here I'm not playing as aggressive as I played on the other match, because I really wanted to catch up with some melee infantries, or pretty much to any infantries. The light artillery here is actually hoping to counter the elephants. The stakes are built and light artilleries are built as well, but the positioning is really bad. Any second now the trees should shake, yeah they are shaking, and the elephants are walking through. The stakes will do a little damage, around 15% I'm guessing. But then again, if it is seen, the elephant can walk around it. I am actually 2 tiers higher than those opponents up there, but he actually can't destroy a single elephant even with all 3 of his units. He will throw light pila to my middle elephant, so that actually doesn't do a lot of damage. It slowed him down like 50%, but it was like nothing. And it does look interesting how a beast can live with so many javelins inside him. As you see, the furthest elephant is going into the forest. He is going after the archers, who will do no damage to the elephants whatsoever. Soon these elephants will be chasing down sword infantries or archers. They can't outrun me, the elephants will keep catching up and eventually destroying them. In short, you can just see how strong the elephants are. Although Germanicus and his vengeance can do some damage to the war elephants, the war elephant will still survive the encounter, although he can still lose a lot of health. It may seem that the war elephants are overpowered right now. They have too much health, their morale is pretty much unshakable, they are faster than most other melee infantries, and often enough they can just ignore the melee infantries and walk over them. And pretty much the only reasonable counters are the catapults and light artilleries. Although javelins can do some damage, they often enough end up in a situation they can't handle. I just want to note that these opponents are tier or 2 tiers lower, and elephant against them is pretty much unstoppable. So how would we balance this type of a beast? Simplest thing to do would be to bring down the health of the elephants. But then again, if the elephant would be at the same tier with its opponents, he wouldn't be so strong. The Defiance and Vengeance can actually eat up the elephants. Fighting against lower tiers, the only counter that could probably destroy me here are the catapults. But then again, I can just walk up to the catapults and destroy them. Even with this single elephant, I could destroy 3 tier 5 swordsmen. If they would be at the same tier with me, they would probably destroy me. Okay, these were the battles where everybody thinks that the elephants are OP. The elephants are tiers higher than them or so. I'm going to show how the same tier opponents react to the elephants. I'm being really aggressive here as I was in the low tier battles, pushing deep into the enemy base, and I'm actually receiving some light artillery fire. I can just move out of their range and then start moving towards them. They're going to have to unpack and soon start running away. Although my elephants took little damage from the light artillery, they still could pretty much ignore it. I'm pushing heavily into the enemy's base. The light artilleries are packing themselves and moving away. Because it's Commander Salla, they might have a slight movement speed bonus over the elephants. I'm actually going to send 2 of my units to chase down the light artilleries, and 1 of my unit to take care of those catapults. The catapults could have destroyed me, and the stakes could have been deployed better. But instead I can just ignore it, walk around it, and just destroy the catapults, walk over them. Every opponent here is at the same tier with me. Everybody is tier 6. In a few moments you will actually see what the melee infantries can do to an elephant. Especially my commander's elephant. He is fighting there in the forest, I'll return there in a moment. And you can see the barbarian units fighting against me. It's Vercingetorix, its unit has surrounded me and is doing quite decent damage towards me. I'm guessing that the barbarians do get the bonus in the forest, and they also have the Iron Discipline active, which can be a positive ground effect modifier. At first I was trying to push through, so I might have taken a bit more damage than usual. So the swordsmen like Vercingetorix and Germanicus with their Defiance have a really great chance against the war elephants. At first with this elephant I went against the catapults. I went against their swordsmen and they actually did quite a lot of damage towards me. But at first I was also ignoring the swordsmen and going after the catapults. So there might have come some extra damage. So 1 versus 1 the elephant will still beat infantry. But when they are at the same tiers they will still take some damage. Now I'm sending this low health elephant into the thick of it. Here you can probably see the best way you can mess with elephants. I'm going after the disengaging unit, and here you see the other unit is swarming me. They also slowed me down, and the Vercingetorix used Defiance. With the elephant, if you can mess with their target and engage them while they're targeting the unit that is furthest, you might actually have a chance against them. So what I basically wanted to point out is that the elephants aren't that strong when they're fighting against the same tier opponents. But the elephants can be too strong when fighting against lower tier opponents. Here you can see the lower tier match continuing, and it is just mindless what the elephant can do here. He could probably destroy everybody in that base. So my focus was just to point out that the matchmaking with the elephants needs to be as balanced as possible. I personally wouldn't like to see any elephants before I reach tier 6. They change the dynamic of the game too much, and usually there's a lot of them. There can be retardedly many elephant players on both teams. The maximum number of elephant players should be 2, no more. And the tier difference shouldn't be bigger than ±1. Because right now it seems that tier 4s and 5s need some serious bonuses against the elephants. Even here, where they try to swarm me, they aren't slowing me down as effectively. But if I would be fighting against the same tier opponents, the slow would actually be very real. Right here I can just pretty much ignore everybody. So the problem isn't in the balance of the elephants. Or at least not entirely. It is in the matchmaking and the tier difference. Putting war elephants into the match where all opponents are tier lower is pretty much a victory for the war elephant team. And I actually think this happens too often and it needs to be changed or balanced some way. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the war elephants don't act exactly like most other units when they're on low health. I'm not talking about the view range or the moral penalty, although it may touch that topic as well. I guess I could bring an example like if you have 100 spearmen. They're in phalanx, they're very strong, they can be offensive, defensive and so. But when you have 20 spearmen, they won't stand as strong. While the elephant still seems to be very strong while he's on the low health. Or perhaps he is weaker and I just haven't noticed it. There are so many ways I have heard players complaining about the war elephants. Some even suggesting nerfs and balance changes. For example, elephant to take up 2 unit slots in the commander's army, or to reduce their health by half. But I indeed must agree that there is something too strong about the elephants. Although the same tier opponents can handle them, there are so many others who just can't. As I mentioned before, the biggest problem is the tier difference. Elephant can pretty much walk over everybody who is lower than their tier. I'm not saying that they are still balanced for their own tier, but compared to lower tiers, at least the same tier or stronger tier opponents can handle against elephants. Perhaps handle is a wrong word. They can stand against elephants a bit better, but the elephant will still most likely destroy them. If you would send tier 6 Germanicus and elephant head on, the elephant would lose a lot of health. But the problem is that the elephant will support the fighting units, and by doing so he will do no friendly fire. He will destroy the opponent who is already engaged with infantry, and if the opponent should focus the elephant, they would still get burned either way. This is how elephant can change a battlefield in a matter of seconds. Personally, I would like to see a limitation on the elephants, meaning that you can only have 1 elephant and 2 spearmen, swordsmen, cavalry, or whatever you wish. Because the elephants weren't the biggest part of the Hannibal's army. There was a lot of infantry. The elephants just stood out. I'm sure each of us has our own vision of how they should be balanced. If anyone has some innovative ideas, I would definitely like to hear them, so leave them in the comments. This was it about the war elephants. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe and thanks for watching.